Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Communications and Cigars. Yes, it's a little bit different in how we've kind of done things on there. Remember, we went along and said we're going to be doing some recorded episodes, some interviews and stuff. Well, today on this episode of Communications and Cigars, we have a treat, as I considering it a treat, where we're going to be talking to Mr. Richard Carlisle, who is the founder of this device right here. This is the Tornado Alert, okay? The Tornado Alert. And we have an interview with him today on communications and cigars. So kind of excited, kind of pumped up about this. Reason being is that it's kind of an interesting thing on there. So we're going to kind of cover that in a little bit here, but welcome to this episode. So first of all, as always, I want to go ahead and take time. I usually do this a little bit there, but I want to take off time to first of all say thank you to everybody that does tune into the channel. Thank you to everybody that does do comments and feedback. Thank you to everybody that's turning in to the podcast. That's correct. Communication Cigars, we're not only a channel on YouTube here, but we also do have the MCOM Chat podcast, which can be found on Podbean. And the MCOM Chat podcast is kind of sort of that continuation, that extension of Communications and Cigars, where people say, hey, we want to talk about some other different things on there and what have you. And kind of it's like, oh, okay, well, how can we fit it in? You know, sometimes it doesn't require video. Sometimes people don't even want to watch video. They just want to listen to a podcast or something like that in there. Guess what? The MCOM Chat podcast is going to be that answer for you. So thank you for tuning into that. But once again, thank you very much for tuning in as you subscribe to our channel, that kind of thing. Thank you to the people for our anniversary. You're for the shirt, or for winning the shirts, I should say. Those have been going out there. Who would ever thought in this day and age that there's a delay on getting shirts? I know it's kind of weird and everything like that, but let's forget all that stuff like that. Once again, Communications and Cigars. We try to release an episode, or now kind of doing the podcast like every other week. So we might do an episode one week and then might be take not next week, but the following week. So we're kind of working out the schedule, trying to get back to a regular schedule. Trying to. It sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. But of course, on Communications and Cigars, we are talking about all things communication, not just amateur radio, but amateur radio, GMRS, FRS, marine, aviation, all those kind of things like that. And I've had people saying, John, I've never really heard you talk too much about aviation or marine. Yeah, we got things coming up on there. We got some things coming up on there. And we got new products we're going to be talking about also too. And I just want to say about the products, we're not here to do opinions. We're here to go ahead and give facts on it. So that's one of the things that I like to do. I don't want to give opinions. I don't like to give, I want to give facts. I want you to make it, you know. So are we going to have unboxing videos? No, we're not really planning on any sort of unboxing videos. Are we going to have things and, hey, here's this and this and this? No, we'd rather have education on this channel than actually like, hey, take a look at this because this looks cool and da-da-da-da-da-da. We are working on some other things coming up here soon. So stay tuned, keep tuning into us and stuff like that on there, and we'll kind of do it from there. But as the title says, hey, guess what? It's Communications and Cigars. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about cigars. So one of the things that, of course, we started out with here was going ahead and starting out with, and what's their name, Communications and Cigars, was how we started out kind of having, myself and a couple friends started to have sort of like a, per se, a video session on the porch, and we talked about some different communication items while enjoying a cigar, and then it kind of started to get into that kind of aspect of things, and guess what? Next thing you know is it evolved into this. But one of the things that I find interesting about cigars is the different accessories or varieties of things that have cigars. And today's, I'm going to talk about the punches and the cutters. Now, one of the things about cigars, which is very interesting, is that you have a wide variety of sizes, and with a wide variety of sizes of cigars, you also have a wide variety of different ways to, how do you want to say, enjoy or start to enjoy your cigar. So that comes down to cutters and punches. Now, standard cutters that people will think will literally just kind of snip off the tip of it. It's kind of almost like a guillotine blade for the cigar, if you want to say. You put the tip of the cigar through there and you snap it, cut it off there. That's nice. Some people do like that. One of the things that sometimes it can be is if you don't cut it right or you cut it too much, you're wasting the cigar. If you don't cut it enough, when the cap is wrapped on the cigar, that can be quite a difficulty in kind of the operation of it. And the reason I say is because if you cut it too short, that wrapping the cap is still there. You'll be enjoying a cigar, but then you actually have the cigar sometimes start to almost kind of unravel itself. Now, some people say, "Hey, well, if you don't like a cutter, then go ahead and actually take a look at doing a punch." Now, before I move on to punches, let's talk about cutters, because there are a couple different cuts. There are kind of basically the straight cut, and then there is also what a lot of people like, which is also known as the V cut, where it actually will kind of cut into the V. Now, one of the things that you talk about with some people who have a V cut, they'll say sometimes a V cut is more along the lines of a punch, because over the tip of the cigar, what you're doing is, in essence, you're cutting a V into the cigar there. So some people will say it's more like you're almost punching out the tip of it, but in a V shape. And I guess that's, tomato kind of the preference on there. The other one is, like I said, the punch, where basically what you're doing is you're taking a circular kind of blade. Basically kind of almost looks like, just a little, I don't know, say like just a little blade that's a circle, put it into the end there, and that will punch out the tip of it. Now, there's goods and bads to punches and cuts. I use personally both. The reason being is if I have a bigger cigar, I may not have the ability to completely cut off the tip, nor do I want to completely cut the tip, and I may just want to do a punch. Now, what the thing is that some of the cigars that I do have are smaller, so what I can do then is I could take and I could just snip off that end of the tip, and it works good. What does this overall mean? Well, when it comes to cigars, punching and cutting is going to be a personal preference. The biggest thing that you want to go ahead and do is have one that you can easily draw and do a nice pull with the cigar. If you can't easily draw, sometimes it could be wide variety of things. Maybe the cigar is too tarry. Maybe the punch is too small for it. Remember, the bigger cigar, the bigger the punch you might actually need. Same thing with the cutter. The bigger the cigar, the bigger cutter you might need. But with it, you need to be able to draw evenly off the cigar, and you want to make sure that nothing is going to clog up that tip too much on there. I've had cigars where I thought it was a big enough punch, or even I cut off enough, and it doesn't go ahead and work. Now, from a person who sometimes will enjoy a cigar and not have a chance to fully enjoy a full cigar, this is where a cut sometimes will come nicely. I've had situations where I've started a nice cigar, but guess what? For whatever reason happened, I needed to stop smoking the cigar at that point in time. Well, with my cutter, I was able to go over and get as close to the end, snip it off, and then a nice long cigar that I had, maybe I only had that much I've smoked on it, but then I could save the rest of it for later. So that's kind of that thought about punches and cutters on this week's episode of Communications and Cigars. But without further ado, let's go in and say, hey, if you ever have any questions or ideas or comments for the show, don't be afraid to go ahead and email us communications and cigar, or communications-cigars at jjkcom.com. That's right, communications-cigars at jjkcom.com. JJK Communications is a proud sponsor of Communications and Cigars. If you have rentals, if you need two-way radios for the business, the LMR, FRS, GMRS, whatever case may be, go ahead and reach out there. They do specialize in business, commercial, FRS, GMRS, and wilderness type based radios. No, they don't do any amateur. No, they don't do marine. No, they don't do aviation. They're busy enough with that. But check into that at JJK Communications. Once again, sponsor of our show. Their their web address is jjkcom.com. But if you want to email us at the show, communications-cigars at jjkcom.com on there. So without further ado, let's get into our interview. Well, hello, everybody. John Crook, Communications and Cigars here at 9UPC. And, one of the things we do on Communications and Cigars a lot is we like to go ahead and talk not just about the amateur community. I've said this lots of times. I like to talk about things in general and sort of, along the lines of even emergency preparedness, emergency communications, those kind of things. For those that know me, you know that I came from a strong background of emergency management, and that's where I went into studies for and everything. And I have today, which I'm considering a very, very special guest here. And the reason I consider it a special guest is because he has a device, he has a product, which I'm going to tell you, regardless of what you're in, if you like to just watch the skies with lightning, like I did last night on the porch, I was out there doing some work, I was watching, bam, some lightning came across, or whether you are emergency preparedness, emergency management, anything to do with you need to be alert with the weather, that's what we need to talk about today. And you probably got a hint from the background that I've put up on there today. And today I'm going to talk to Richard Carlisle. He is the owner and patent holder of Tornado Alert. Now, Tornado Alert, the picture is right up here on the screen with you there. This is an amazing device. This is an amazing product. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to blabber on about testimony and stuff like that. I'm going to let Mr. Carlisle go ahead and speak about it. Thank you for coming on to my show. It's a great honor.
Good morning, John. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, you know, I want to give you my story on this. This was one of those things where I stumbled upon it. It really is what I kind of did. And what it was is that I was down at Huntsville Hamfest. And obviously, people know me. I wear multiple hats, and today I'm spinning my hat. And so what ended up happening was that I was walking around and I see this device. And I'm like, well, what is this device? And I kind of started talking to and kind of looking at it and this and this and this and this. And the reason that it caught my attention is my daughter loves weather. I think most kids, I think we can agree, love weather, right? But what happens is there's this tiny fine line where we go from loving weather to, oh my God, I hate it, I don't want to deal with it anymore. And, right. You know, I try to tell my kids, you know, hey, wait a minute, you know, Dad's got he's on EMS, so he's got his pager, he's got his alert, everything that you need in order to be known that there's going to be something coming. But I think the one thing that people don't realize is the latency in when a tornado is spotted, or I shouldn't say spotted, well, spotted or detected, right, with the National Weather Service.
Correct.
And then the time that it takes for the National Weather Service to really, per se, validate it, and then they have to send it to the PSAP, or Public Safety Answering Point. And then they usually, now mind you, I'm in Wisconsin here, so what they do is that they send that to, I believe, the Wisconsin State Patrol. Then the Wisconsin State Patrol for that weather office area sends it out to all the 911 agencies and comm centers, and then they go ahead and they tone it out. Now, it does seem like a little bit of process, but that could be a minute or two.
7 minutes.
7 minutes, even more so worse, you know. And I remember... and even if you subscribe to INWS, the Interactive National Weather Service, which I have, and if you meet the criteria, even then I've noticed there's a delay because, once again, that's coming from the Weather Service. So the issue has always been, how can we alert the people faster? And that's always the biggest thing. But this does it. This is it.
In 1 minute. From analysis to alert is 1 minute.
So we're gonna talk about the product a little bit more. Obviously, I'm gonna, after we get done with the interview here, I'm gonna show you kind of the actual device itself on here, so we can go ahead and I'll go through kind of like a review on how it works and stuff like that. But tell me a little bit about where this idea came from. How did this become to fruition for what I'm gonna call a life-saving device?
Well, let me explain my background just a little bit, because I am not a meteorologist. I rejected meteorology back in 1975 because it's strictly Newtonian classical mechanics. It's insufficient for my needs. I'm a chemist by training and background. Okay. Electromagnetism is the basis of all chemistry. And I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama. So you get reminded of these things every spring. There's no missing it. So I intended to be a chemist in college. I enrolled at the University of Alabama in Birmingham to become a research chemist. I was even a lab assistant for Dr. Larry Kranich, head of the chemistry department at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. But I've never taken a undergraduate course in chemistry at the university level. I tested out of the undergraduate level with a college level entrance program even before I took chemistry in high school. So while I was waiting to get into the master's program at the university, it was a 10-year doctorate program. I changed my mind. I was working at the computer center for the university, the Rust Research Center,
Okay.
which is the computer operation for the entire university. And I changed my major to computer science. Well, I've never taken an undergraduate course in computer science either. They waived the requirements, and I went right to the master's program for the
Wow.
computer science. And I took one course, the only course I've ever taken in computer science, and made the top grade in the course. So I left the university. I pretty much learned all I was going to learn, and went to work for Dr. Gene Amdahl, who was the inventor of the IBM 360 and 370 computers. He revolutionized the computer business, and then was assigned to NASA. So that's my background. But the idea of caught my attention when there was an article in a Popular Mechanics in 1969 describing the Weller method. You can detect tornadoes with the TV. The electromagnetic signature emits at 55 megahertz on channel 2 on the TV. And it's very effective, but it's limited in its range, 15 to 20 miles. It's very difficult to distinguish between severe storms and tornadoes. And so I'd developed this technology after reading Ted Fujita's original Fujita scale that was published in 1971. And he blended the Beaufort scale of wind force with the Mach scale of speed. Well, the question was, what is the actual speed? There was no measurements. There was a big question about what the speed, the velocity of the wind really was. And that being a question, well, I know we can measure the electromagnetic force because it's on the TV. And why don't we blend the electric charge with the Beaufort scale of wind force? And so I came up with that scale and actually received an outstanding achievement in science from NASA in 1973, Dr. Rocco Petrone, director of the Marshall Space Flight Center. Now, let me tell you, for a kid from Alabama, in northern Alabama, shaking that man's hand was quite a feat. And my dad was there at Samford University at that award ceremony. That's probably one of the highlights of my life.
Nice.
But I developed this at the University of Alabama. There were two of us doing waveform analysis of the electrical charge detected by radio, myself and William Taylor of NOAA. He developed an electromagnetic detection. His analysis, his design was evaluated by Georgia Tech on a NASA contract. And when they completed that, it was modified and implemented at NASA Kennedy for the ground operations. I don't know if you remember, but Apollo 12 was hit by lightning twice on launch.
Yep.
And so they implemented a lightning protection program using this Bill Taylor's original design. They call it LDAR, lightning distance and ranging. And that's still there today.
Okay, yep.
So I was assigned to NASA Kennedy in 1986 and moved to Florida. And that was my principal account. And I had trouble convincing them that cloud to ground is important for ground operations with rockets. I get that. But if you want to analyze weather, you need to analyze total lightning, the upper atmosphere and the lower atmosphere. And so that was finally resolved in 1991. They came out LDAR 2, lightning distance and range 2, which uses total lightning, not just the cloud to ground, which they were concerned about with rocket launching. Paul Crable of University of New Mexico Tech out in Cigar, New Mexico, took that LDAR 2 design and developed the LMA, Lightning Mapping Array. And so that's what's installed now. NASA's operating those in 10 different locations across the country, including Georgia Tech in Atlanta. So I've been working with them for the last decade. And
now, isn't that also too the base model now that they're trying to do that for civilians? So like you can pull up the lightning,
total lightning.
Yep, yes, because I know there's some people that will joke around and they're weather geeks and they know I'm into radio and they'll send me a text message sometimes. Oh, you better turn off your radios and antennas today because there's all that lightning coming on there. So now that was back. We're still talking like the 60s and the 70s, correct?
Right.
Okay.
So, but the LDAR and the LMA were around 2000, 92 for the LDAR 2 at NASA, and then the LMA came out around 2000.
Okay.
So, but the LMA is limited range. It can only be in one area, covers about 120 kilometers, and so they can't cover the entire country with it. So I came up with this design. The problem I ran into was that in order to analyze the waveforms, the signals I'm detecting from a radio receiver, required a substantial computer processing.
Mm.
So in the 70s, I had a mainframe all to myself, so I could transmit the data and do the analysis. The problem is when a system is under duress, when the infrastructure is under duress from a storm, the power system, the transmitters, your radio antenna, so on and so forth, that storm destroys and damages all that infrastructure. So transmitting the data to a central location and then transmitting that result out to the community was a challenge. That's where the thing fails. That's where the system fails. So at the same time that this was going on, the smoke detector was being developed and released. And I thought, the smoke detector model in each home. Why not? And that way you avoid the problems of transmission and communication and power outages. So in 2011, I was in Birmingham in 2011. Power outages everywhere. My brother-in-law, where I was staying, had satellite. You can't receive satellite signals, so you don't get TV in a storm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So all these issues needed to be addressed with a smoke detector-like device that would go into every home and tell you what the status of the storm was. It analyzes the signal, the electric charge in the atmosphere, and every minute gives you a status update as to whether it's just lightning or it's intensifying to not severe, below severe criteria, continues to escalate to the severe status. And then there's a tornado risk, which is equivalent to the considerable risk that the National Weather Service introduced last August. Those are roughly equivalent. It's more than severe, but not yet tornadic.
Right.
And then if it continues to intensify and the rotation begins and the signal becomes constant, just like Weller detected on the TV, it turns the screen completely bright, white, solid, that's a tornado. So we've had good success with it. It's within a 30-mile range, 50 kilometers. It gives about a 20-minute advance notice. Most of that not waiting for the delays we've already talked about. It gives it every minute, but also because not the infrastructure, it doesn't rely on the infrastructure. So you don't know if you've missed a warning in the middle of the night. How do you know?
Right.
How do you know you didn't get that warning? So it's been very successful in waking people up at night when we're most vulnerable.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about it, because you bring up a great point, is that as much as I hear, and I've always been involved with when we do the education, especially from the old days of emergency management, it's like, be prepared. And I hear so many people say, well, I got my cell phone, or I got my TV and stuff. But you bring up good points. There's like rain fade. I mean, that's why I got rid of satellite TV, is because I'm in Wisconsin. I got a clear, great view to the sky. But the minute we have a storm come through, these are usually pretty good, and the rain fades out. So I'm out without TV. Well, then you have an antenna on your roof. Okay, so that's not bad. But once again, then you're delayed with the TV thing. Now you go ahead and take a look at even more, and I fall into this category. I don't even have cable TV anymore. I've cut the cord. You know what I mean? So you're streaming services, and you can't even get local channels.
I'm in Florida, so every afternoon at 4:00, you lose it. You lose satellite. It just it cannot penetrate those storms.
Yep.
But that's assuming that the National Weather Service has issued a warning.
Correct.
All right. So what if lightning has hit the radar station? That happens quite often.
Yep.
And it knocks it out for a week. Now what do you do? What happens when wind debris collects on the antenna for the weather alert radio transmitter. Now that transmitter's out. You can't receive that signal. So there's all kind of issues that this bypasses and overcomes.
Yep. And you're right. And living in Northwest Wisconsin, I remember when I was younger, that situation exactly happened. One of the transmitters, something happened and it got zapped, and what happened was is all the audio that they had uploaded was gone, was down. And if you listen to it, it was a humming kind of carrier noise, like a bad audio.
Right.
But going back to what you said, this actually is kind of funny because once again, growing up in Northwest Wisconsin, what happened was is that my grandma, we would do that. Now they didn't have a channel 3 where we were, or 2, I'm sorry, where we were at. They had a channel 3. Now folks, we're talking about analog TV. So
Right.
if you did not own an Atari, okay, you may not understand what we were talking about here, but growing up, I do remember that when the bad storms would come through, what would happen is that we would go, and sometimes she would disconnect the antenna on the TV even, but what she would do is she would take and sometimes, like, we would have like a little, I would say like a little internal antenna on there, and we would turn to channel 2, and you're right. What would happen is when we would have these severe storms coming through, the screen would flash white, or you could see there was something there, but you didn't know what it was.
Right.
And it was totally interesting. So that's actually interesting kind of how that is there. But now let's dig into this a little bit more on the design on it. This isn't, and I guess I want to stress, this is a standalone unit. You could power it with AC power. But if you
or 9-volt battery,
or that's what I was gonna say, or 9-volt, it is not. In essence, this is an off-the-grid device, as some people would call it, to the point where you could take this thing camping.
Correct.
And I think that is where it is, because we've had, once again, horrible storms that came through. That if people would have been alerted, and I'll be honest with you, when I go camping, yes, I bring a radio, but that's about the only thing I have connected, and maybe I might have AC power at the campsite if possible. But now this thing could sit and you are aware of it even 10 times, because it's and I'll show once we get done here, I'll go ahead and show people how it is. But really, it's got a built-in antenna. It's there.
Self-contained. And the reason for the 9-volt battery, not just camping, but if you're in a severe storm, you're going to lose power. It's going out.
Yep.
So the battery backup it was essential to maintain operation.
Now, looking at this device and seeing how it's designed, I could tell just by the way that it looks at it that there was things to put in there to let it be something that can sit off to the side of the shelf and you don't have to worry about it. But then also too is not to be. And I guess, you use the example of a smoke alarm. Let's use a CO alarm. You could buy CO alarms that just beep when they're CO, but, on EMS especially, it's like, well, does it have a reading on there? Well, no, it doesn't. Well, okay, we got problems where if you have a reading on the meter, then, hey, we can at least know. Same thing with this device. It is actually going to tell you what the threat is or what it's getting concerned about, correct?
Or it's not. There's no threat. So it's out of sight, out of mind. We have the most common feedback we get is, what is that? I hear it. It's been so long, right? They forget what it is. So, it performs the function of a smoke detector. And if a smoke detector goes off, you don't run around in a circle. You have a plan. You get up and you do something. You execute your plan for the safety of your family. Same thing.
Yep. And that display, kind of tell me a little bit about that display on there, because that I think was the most interesting part to me, because like I said, initially I'm thinking setting this up, it's just going to tell me what tornadoes. It's not just telling you tornadoes. It's actually giving you some positive feedback of what it's seeing.
Correct. So the top line gives you the storm state, whether there's just lightning within 30 miles, if it's intensifying and gotten to the not severe, below severe criteria, whether it's achieved severe, which is 58 mile per hour winds. I still use the original 3/4 inch hail. The National Weather Service went to 1 inch hail, but I'm still using the original criteria before 2010. That's another point I should make, is that the TV was analog before 2010. They introduced a digital, all TVs are digital now. And so that method no longer works on those digital receivers. It has to be analog
Yep.
So people need to understand that. So I meant to mention that a while ago. Um, but the tornado risk, that's probably the considerable risk. I only have 12 characters on the LCD. Considerable takes up all 12. So I'm limited in what I can say. So we had to come up with short, concise messages that fit within 12 characters. Tornado risk does that. But that's where you probably should execute your plan and get to a safe place, at least begin, because if it intensifies much further and it doesn't take much, it will become a tornado.
Yep, and that's the nice thing because it did. Like I said, I've been using mine for a couple years now, and yeah, it does give you that alert saying, okay, hey, hey, wait, there's lightning in the area. Okay, great, because I like that because then I start to go and batten down the hatches. Like, I'm gonna disconnect my couple $1,000 HF radio and hey, let's just go down and make sure that I don't have anything else on that I need. Those kind of things like that on there. But then it does kind of show you that there. But now when that tornado comes, this thing is it's loud and it's like the second coming because you have a strobe light built into it.
Correct.
And then what it's is that a 90? It is a truly 90 decibel. All I know is like we had it on one night. It went off at 2 a.m. I jumped out of bed like, oh, what's going on? Like, someone breaking into my house here, or what's the deal? But that is a 90 decibel siren built into the device itself.
Correct. Now, some people are concerned that they have pets and they don't want to leave it up disturb their pets who are already excited about a storm during the day while they're not at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can disable the siren. So by pressing the right button, it will display whether the siren is on or off. You can disable the strobe because some people are photosensitive.
Yep.
Right. So you want to disable the strobe. You can disable it for severe thunderstorm. I don't want to be awakened in the middle of the night for a severe thunderstorm. So I disable it by pressing both buttons and it will disable severe thunderstorm. You cannot turn off tornado. It's going to alert. Now, you need to have either the siren or the strobe on, but you can also tell from the LED. There's an LED on the top of the unit.
Yep.
It's normally green. If it goes to severe, it will turn yellow. And then if there's a tornado, it'll turn red. So you can tell across from a dark room what the state is, whether the siren and strobe are going off or not.
Nice. And I, usually when it's gone off during the middle of the night, I'm up and springing anyways, but I'm also used to the pager that goes off too. So you kind of got to get into that mindset. But it's really nice because, yeah, it was the one night that it did go off. Us in the, once again, Northwest Wisconsin, we tend to have this 3 a.m. thing that Mother Nature likes to hit us about. So that's the problem. We'll go to bed at like midnight or so, things will be good. And then all of a sudden, boom, it comes through and goes from there. Now, I've heard some stories, and that's why I kind of wanted to have the interview with you and kind of talk about it. I've heard people in stories of integration into their communication system. Can you tell me a little bit about how your design and if you have any interesting stories of how people are integrating that into their systems?
Well, we're developing a second version that we don't have the need for the alerting feature. So there's no LCD, no strobe, no siren because it's intended to go outside. It mounts outside on a weather station, a personal weather station. So it communicates to the weather station and you can have all the information being displayed. And if you use a Davis Instruments Pro 2 weather station,
okay,
it will send you text messages or emails.
Oh, wow.
For the alerts. And so even if you're not home, you will receive those. And it's kind of handy to know what's going on at the house, when you're traveling or whatever, what situational awareness.
Oh yeah, I was at Hamvention when we had a severe hailstorm that came through, and I mean my roof has had to be replaced, my sidings had to be.
Oh wow!
It was there, and what I'm doing is I'm frantically as I'm in Ohio watching the storm system come through, and my wife and kids are actually at a dog show just about 15 minutes away, and we're texting each other back and forth like, hey, did you call this, did you call this, and stuff. That would have been great to know. But this it's not just for, I would say, the individual. This can be integrated into like direct connections to radio networks, correct? Is there a way to kind of as this new version might be coming out, or with this version, to send alerts down a, let's say, a repeater of some sort or anything like that?
Well, see, that's what I'm trying to avoid, because those get damaged during the storms, right? There's power
Gotcha.
outages, right? And so that's not reliable. So it's intended for the individual.
Okay.
That right? Because you start setting up these networks. That's what the National Weather Service has done, and they fail.
Gotcha. And the reason I asked that, because you always hear, and I was part of a club one time that they were just emphatic about, like, we have to have weather alert radios, and they integrated them into there. But that's nice, because you're right. When you have that network fail, if you're putting all your eggs in one basket, that's how it is.
You're
there.
done. You're done. And the other thing with the weather alert radio, there's a 75% false alarm rate. So people waking up in the middle of the night for a false alarm, it gets turned off and put in a drawer.
Yep. Now that's another important part too, because a lot of places, when they're doing, like the National Weather Service, for an example, they'll do obviously the same alert. So you have your county code or your city code or whatever. So that's there, and they try to alert that area. But for an example, in our county, for us on public safety, when they let off the siren, our county's nice and square. We luck out for the most part, and they drew a big X. And right where I'm at, where I live, I'm just below the main intersecting point there. So what happens is that they do quadrant-based siren activation. So our siren will sometimes go off for something all the way in the, well, I should say the southwest corner of the county, which is barely, it's not even going to hit us. We could look out our back window and saying, oh, hey, great, there's a storm down there, but it's not going to do that. This takes it and then brings it back down to your
30 miles,
area.
30 miles. It's
30
you.
miles.
It's you. 30 miles. It's you. You don't have to worry about what the shape of the polygon is, whether you're you're involved, because it's that 30-mile circle. Now, here's the other thing with the phone alerts. If you're just outside that polygon, you don't get the alert. Right?
Yep.
So the polygon always necessarily a specific area for that storm to cause damage. So if you're not, this doesn't go by the polygon. It's 30 miles. There it is. It's you.
Nice. Now, do you have, any tips or advice that, a person's going in, buying this device, they're going to take it home, they're going to set it up. Any advice, tips, how they should set it up, usage, location, anything that you could kind of suggest from the inventor of it?
Well, sure. It needs to be near a window. And if you read the instructions, it needs to be 3 feet within a window, and make sure you're getting that low band transmission. It's 1,800 meters is the wave I'm looking for. So it's long band. So put it near a window, 3 feet, so it makes sure it doesn't attenuate the signal at all, right? You want to get that full 30-mile range. Interference is the one issue. So you may have, you're a radio guy, so there can be noise in your AC, right?
Yep.
So test it. If it doesn't pass the initial test, we look for that interference during the initial startup test. And so we want to make sure that it's not going to interfere with the operation of the device. So if you have some noise on the AC line, unplug it, put it on battery, see if it is in your AC system. LED lighting, it's great, but it's the noisiest thing on the planet. LED lighting causes interference. My engineer that we work at, his lab, he put LED lighting. We use it to see if the device is receiving when we build another one, because it's noisy as everything. So you want to keep it away from PCs. You want to keep it away from televisions. Any DC motor will emit that type of interference. Your phone, this phone is noisy, especially with the screen is lit up. So keep your phone away from it. So the interference is probably the most important. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, because I was going to say, mine, I had that same situation where I had it by the door, or had it by a window. and the window's facing west because obviously all the stuff always the wet storms always come from the west. So hey, great view there. But then
Oh,
the
good.
kids' computer were there, and what would happen is we would notice that the kids would just let the computer go to sleep, but they wouldn't shut it off, and then sometimes we'd get interference. Well, then so I moved the kids' computer. We took care of that. Fine, not a problem. But then all of a sudden, my wife, got her, I hope she's not watching, but your Cricket device, okay, and some other stuff that she does for her business, and that started to throw off some interference too. Now, believe it or not, so I put it on by our patio door, which faces south and is in the far kind of southwest corner of our house, but I actually put it up on top of our little pantry shelving area up there. So not in the pantry, but up on the shelf there.
Right.
And it works flawlessly. No interference, no nothing. So there can be susceptible, but you can easily find a spot to do it on there.
And it will inform you if it's detecting. It'll say noise, and that says it's detecting interference. It's would interfere with a normal operation. So that says move it. That's your choice.
Nice,
right?
Nice. Now, here's a big question. Where can we get this? How can people that want to say, hey, I want to buy this, I want to get this for my home, I want to understand this, but also understand that this is something that is going to like I said, my opinion, this is it, and then like a weather radio is the how do you want to say, the validator to it is the best way to do it. But I take everything from that tornado alert. Now, where can we buy this? Where can people get it?
Well, it's available from Scientific Sales. They also sell the Davis weather stations. It's available from Amazon and Home Depot.
Okay. Oh, Home Depot. Great. I didn't even know that. That's great.
Home Depot participated in the field test of this device.
Oh, really?
We built over 100 devices and sent them out to Home Depot stores around the country, over 150 Home Depot stores in 2012. Now they were silent. They didn't have the alarming because we didn't want to disturb the employees.
Right.
And it was a blind study. We knew where they were, but we didn't know what they were detecting. And so we sent them all out. They recorded what they recorded. Hurricane Isaac went right up through the middle of our test sector. And so when it turned severe over Illinois, we detected all that. And so the Home Depot users sent them back, and we evaluated all that data. Meteorologists evaluated the data, and it met our criteria of 90% effectiveness. So, that was done 10 years ago.
Oh, wow. So just kind of recap. No internet required. No
Correct.
Relying upon the National Weather Service. Nothing. This is a standalone device. And just, you
don't have to program it. You do not have to program the same code.
There you go. It's just
it's for you.
Set it up. The instructions are very easy. Well, I'll kind of go and they're online. I mean, it's really super simple, easy, more easy than I think people may actually believe, because that's the problems with other radios now these days. You get it and you got to program the same code. You got to do this. You got to find your right channel. There's nothing like this whatsoever. But just the applications. I mean, if people are looking at it, I mean, you gave a good example, Home Depot. They got lumber yards that they have to deal with. Obviously, I'm close to Eau Claire, Wisconsin, so if anybody knows Menards, obviously,
oh yeah,
these things are just great alert devices for there, and you can take them anywhere. So, I'm going to tell people go to Home Depot. I like to go to Home Depot just to walk around. And I mean, new things, every day, I'm building my Christmas list, right?
Right.
But you said Amazon, and you said, what was the other one? Just want to clarify.
Scientific Sales.
And they do have the Davis weather system.
Right.
Weather system. A lot of people consider it, I do too, that it is a standard, an industry standard for good, high-quality weather stations. I got to say, this is an industry standard that needs to be added to that Davis weather system there. So, Mr. Carlisle, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really, once again, really do appreciate it because, like I said, I really like to focus on people being ready, that preparedness here on communications and cigars. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for the opportunity. As you can tell, I love talking about this stuff.
Well, thank you for coming on. And now let's go ahead and take a look at the actual device, and we're going to see and kind of give a good example of how these devices can work with a demo unit that I was able to go ahead and do some video on. So thank you, Mr. Carlisle.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, Mr. Carlisle, we thank you very much for coming on the show, as we said here, for the interview. But let's talk about the device itself. So this is the device. This is the device right here. It's not big. It's very small, very compact, very nice size and shaped. And once again, this is not a difficult item to have. I mean, not in any way, shape, or form. Getting a little glare of the screen there, but this is it. This is what sits on your table, on your wherever it might be. Once again, as he said, have it by that window, but this is my personal one. Like I said, this is the one that I have that I got because my daughter just she was afraid of storms. That's what it was. She was afraid of storms. And I can't blame her. It gets scary sometimes with storms. I even get scared of sometimes with storms on here, but this device is pretty amazing. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to give a firsthand kind of look in regards to it all. So first of all, here is the strobe, and then here is like the LED light that is on there. Here is the display. We're going to go through with like a little bit of a demo one. So I got dog here, search and rescue, right? I'm going to go ahead and show you a little bit of a demo one here in just a moment to kind of really be able to accentuate a few things on there. So controls are pretty simple. You have on-off switch, very simple, very easy. And as stated, you can run this off of DC power with the power supply. Now they give you a power supply with it too. It isn't something like, oh, hey, you got to figure out whatever. No, it's an actual power supply that's on there and comes with your standard plug-in on there for you. So it's literally kind of one you could just plug in and play. Or if you want to, you can actually put in a 9-volt battery in there. And that 9-volt battery kind of sits in there relatively nicely. I have the 9-volt battery in here on this one here, but as you kind of see, it just sits in there, it locks in there, and it's nice, tight, and compact, and you don't need to worry about it whatsoever. Now, 9-volt battery is not going to give you long term, alrighty? It's going to give you maybe 8 to 12 hours. So that's something to kind of consider. And that was listed what was in the manual, but that's something to consider because if you're going to be using this device here as somewhat of that emergency notification thing or whatever, it's sort of like a weather radio for power wise, meaning go ahead and use this on there. But then if you go out with power or something like that, that's when you kind of want to revert over back to that 9-volt battery option on there. Now, this is the DB siren that comes out there. This thing is loud, folks. And I'm talking loud. Alrighty. I have it set up. You can adjust the strobe. You can adjust the strobe. You can adjust the siren for other alerts and what have you on there. But when the tornado is there, when this thing detects that tornado threat, it is loud. Now, obviously, I don't have anything I have the kind of the quasi demo device will simulate it on there. But what will happen is that it will go ahead and once again is very loud on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the demo unit here. And what it's going to do is it's going to go through, it's a little, my gray screen is on there, but it's going to go through a little bit of a test start and setup on there. And then what it's going to do is it's going to say okay on there. Now, one of the things on here is that it's going to take a look at that gauge on there. And that gauge, you can see there's a pass and a fail. If it is going ahead and saying fail, that means it's getting too much interference from something. So that's what I kind of wanted to demonstrate here on this one here. So what you want to do is you see that middle kind of mark right there. You want that middle mark kind of, as I can get it there a little bit better. You want that signal strength to be less over to the pass side. Now, what I found out is that when I'm doing that, sometimes there are things that could easily impact and affect it. I've had it where in my house near the window where I'm at, there was the big heavy electrical line and there's there. So I had to move it to a different window. Not that big of a deal, but once you go ahead and have it pass, then what ends up happening from that point is that it allows you to then say, okay, here we go. We're passing it. We're good to go. We're able to sit and monitor that, in essence, electrical activity, I guess is the way we kind of put it in there with there. So when it passes, what's going to happen is you see the little green light on there and it says no threats on there. It says no threats. So the no threat in essence means it's not detecting that interference. It's not detecting that issue in the sky. Alrighty, so that is a good one. And you want no threats, right? Because no threats mean there's no storms. Now, this definitely means that there are possibilities that if you have storm or stuff coming through that area, if it says no threats, guess what? It means no threats, no worries, no nothing. It's not picking up anything that was described with Mr. Carlisle. Now, in there, you can see it says strobe off, siren off. So you can turn off the siren and the strobe for select situations and select scenarios. Remember, if it senses a tornado, it is going to go off with everything on there. But this isn't just tornado. Even though it's called tornado alert, it's not just tornado. Alrighty? Here's a good example of that there. It detected lightning. So if there was lightning in the area, it would go ahead and would show. Now, the intensity on this graph is 100% representative of the strength or the proximity of the lightning. So once again, if it's a shorter thing, yes, it's detecting lightning, but it just like kind of like for all of us on there, like the receive on like your cell phone, okay? You know, your receive bar. Hey, more bars, more places, right? Same thing with your radio, okay? An S meter, if we will, or hey, could we call it a L meter? But now what we're going to do is we're going to simulate. Here's a not severe situation. So this means that it's detecting a storm, but the storm is not severe, meaning it's not producing that disturbance as Mr. Carlisle talked about in his interview. And these are the good things, because guess what? We do get rain, we do get storms, we do get things that are not severe, and we do get other times and situations where it's going to be severe, and that's what we want to do. Now, as you heard that, this is detecting a severe storm. And when it's detecting a severe storm, and as you hear, it was going ahead and flashing, so I'm going to go do that one more time because this is just a little test demo model here. But as you see, there it's red. Whoop, the LED's red, and now it's strobing. Now, this is not the full potential of the siren, folks, okay? You know, the nice thing about this is that it's toned down, but let me tell you, when this thing goes off, this thing is really going off and it is making loud. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick it up to severe storm. And now what I'm going to do is show you this. This is saying it is a tornado risk. And what's happening in this scenario is that it is going and saying, hey, guess what? There is something bad that's happening. The technology is saying that it is sensing that there could be a tornado coming. This is a National Weather Service. That's, once again, I want to stress that, as we did with the interview with Mr. Carlisle, this is giving you the direct feed. All right, the direct feed. This is going ahead and sensing it from the atmosphere. I mean, this is almost like a good way to describe it is this is almost like a Mother Nature pager. All right, Mother Nature's paging you, saying, hey, bad things are coming. Okay. Now, we're going to go ahead and kick it up to here. We go ahead. So we did the severe storm. We did tornado risk. Now here it's showing tornado in this case, okay? Now it's going ahead and simulating. This is what would be happening. This would be going out very loud. Once again, a lot louder than what it's actually going here right now. And then the light would be on there. That strobe is flashing. It's saying, hey, here's the bad thing that's happening on there. So that is how this would operate. Now, guess what? This is something that you kind of set it and you forget about it and leave it on. It could be on all year round. I don't know where you guys might be watching this, but I'll tell you, Wisconsin, we had tornadoes in January this year. In January. All right? That's usually like snow. I mean, we have thunder snow. I mean, weather can happen at any time. But you got to look at the aspect of this. Like we said, this is it. This is the device. This is it. This box right here. This box right here. That's it. This, how hard is it to carry this? How many times do we hear about, oh, we didn't know it was going to happen. We didn't know that, we wish we had more of advanced warning. Guess what? This device doesn't. Now, once again, I want to stress, I do not work for Tornado Alert. I'm not sponsored by any of their products or anything like this. It truly is a scenario and a situation where I got this for a purpose, and that purpose is to help my daughter ease her situations. All right. So with that, not that difficult to do. And one of the biggest things I think that is important to point out, and I can't stress it enough, is the multiple power options. Alrighty? The multiple power options in regards to the aspect of saying, how hard is it to put in a 9-volt battery? How hard is it to have a 9-volt battery on you? How hard is it to go ahead and be able to plug in? Now, mind you, this is an AC adapter. So on here, it is, I'll put a 12-volt DC 200 milliamps. Guys, I guarantee you, and gals, 10 to 1, you guys got this, probably an adapter like this in there. If you can't have an AC outlet, like let's say you're out camping, or let's say, for an example, you're out doing a Parks on the Air, field day activity, an event with family and friends, those kind of things like that. You could wire this up with this plug to a cigarette lighter and have this plugged into there. Or if you're at a family gathering of stuff, like I don't know about you guys over there, we have pavilions here at our park and everything. They have AC outlets, okay? Or once again, plug it into your car, put it there or something. Lots of different opportunities for this device to be powered. Or, you're going to be out doing something for a little bit and the skies are bad. Hey, guess what? Put a 9-volt battery in here. Now, one thing I had a question on when I first got this, and I was proven wrong, which I'm glad, was how often could this be faked out? How often is this going to go ahead and give what we kind of would consider a false positive instead of pertinent negative? And I'll tell you what, I have not had a false positive on here. I've had warnings, okay? Severe thunderstorm, okay? That this going back in here, this tornado possible, okay, on there. And I've had mine where it's walked through the steps because it's kind of gone through that whole thing of saying, whoa, wait a minute here. We're going from not bad to maybe worse. And I've had this go through. So I've had it show up. Lightning. Whoop. Lightning. And then as it went to lightning, it went, hey, okay, it's not a severe storm. Great. But then all of a sudden, it started to go to severe storm. And then the next thing you know, it's like, oh, whoa, there's a tornado risk. And the next thing you know is it went to a tornado. Now, what scenario did this happen in? Well, this scenario happened actually this year. It was actually, the tornado was south of us by about maybe 10, 12 miles. And this thing started going off. And here's the deal. The National Weather Service has to give a wide protection area. So it went along, and of course it lumped in our whole county, but it wasn't even in our county. But then they said, oh, well, there could be tornado activity. This device right here started stepping through it, started to give, hey, ooh, severe storm. Ooh, kind of a tornado alert. And then it said tornado. And I was like, whoa, there's a tornado. It's going off for a tornado. And I went along, and we were downstairs already, and everything was okay and whatever. But then the next thing I did was I said, woo, guys, let's take heed in this. And sure enough, with this, 4 minutes later, the National Weather Service and the news put out that there was a tornado warning about 10 to 12 miles south of us. 4 minutes, 10 to 12 miles south of us. Now, it was going from west to east, so it wasn't going to hit us. But I'm just thinking, this, once again, what are we going to put on a risk for our life? What kind of price tag? And I'll tell you what, the price tag on these things is 100% well worth it. 100% well worth it. So once again, I thank Mr. Carlisle for going ahead and coming on and discussing this product. This is an amazing technology that, once again, what I really like to have about this show. I mean, once again, it literally is like a Mother Nature pager. And that's what it is. What's a tornado alert? Well, it's a Mother Nature pager for bad weather. That's what this is. But you know what? Every episode wouldn't be an episode without, bends my antenna. You know what really bends my antenna? Is that many times the world of communications is associated with some sort of due diligence or strategic partnering, working with the different agencies, maybe a served agency, maybe weather spotting, maybe going ahead and, numerous different things. Now, a lot of people say, oh, it's amateur radio. There's a lot, like even on the GMR side, first responder side, all this kind of stuff, a lot of different emergency communication stuff is associated with working with partners. We always are talking about, hey, go bags and this, and do you have spare batteries, and do you have this and this and this? But one of the things that we don't do is we don't step through things. And what do I mean by that? And I use kind of a good example of Hurricane Ian that just happened. Okay? When this situation is going on, we have to, as responders, and we have to, as communication people, we have to do all these things to be able to step through the scenario and step through the situation. Now, that doesn't unnecessarily mean specific equipment. Not like, I have my radio. Great. Do I have extra antennas? Yes. Do I have batteries? Yes. Do I have a way to charge the batteries? Yes. Do I have a backup to the batteries? Yes. Do I have spare speaker mics or microphones or antennas? Blah, 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 blah. Have we thought about when we are entrenched in a scenario and situation? And 9 times out of 10, what I'm finding with the studies is that we are not. We are not thinking of that. Okay? How many times has people been through a scenario or situation, especially weather related, considering we're talking about the tornado alert for this episode, of, hey, the storm came through, and it all fizzled out. Well, we don't just shake hands, go home, and say it's good. All of a sudden, the next thing you know is all of a sudden, boom. Ah, crap. A second wave of storms are coming through. A second scenario, second situation. That hurricane started to produce tornadoes. People just got battered by hurricanes, and now it's spawning off tornadoes. Okay? Happens up here in the upper Midwest. I can't tell you how many times this year. One time I counted 4 times. Storm beefed up, came through. Boom. Wow, that was a whiz-banger of a storm, as they say. And then we had a little bit of a lull, and guess what? Boom, started firing up again. Good God. We started to go to a lull, and then technically a third wave came through. Well, now this time it's like 8, 9 o'clock at night, and we're all like, great, it's done, let's go to bed. And what happens at 3 a.m.? Bam, we get smacked one more time. Have we thought about that? Have we thought about how we get out of a situation, how we maintain situational awareness through that? And what really bends my antenna is that we preach and we preach and we preach, and we work hard in the communication aspect to pre-plan, to do the staging, to do this, to get into that situation and to fight in the situation. But we never, ever look at what if we are stuck in that situation and we have to restart in that situation again. We always look at the end. We always try to look for demob. Well, we don't really do demob either, but we try to look for that at the end. We try to look for the proverbial light in a tunnel. What happens if we can't see that proverbial light at the tunnel and we get spun around and now we don't know which way the tunnel is, but now we have to deal with it? Did we know that that situation is going to happen? And guess what? Simple things that we could do, we don't do. Weather radios, tornado alert type devices, numerous different little things that we can do in order to help us stay situationally aware and prevent us from being involved in a situation and unknowingly becoming a victim in the situation. Well, folks, that's it for this episode of Communications Cigars. Once again, I want to thank Mr. Richard Carlisle, the inventor, the patent holder for Tornado Alert. Thank you for a product from my family, from my kids, who has helped them actually become more interested in weather, to know that an SLC, a scary looking cloud, is just that, a scary looking cloud, and for coming on to our show to do the interview. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes that we're going to have on our channel. If you have not, please subscribe to our channel so you can be notified when we do premieres or when we do live episodes. And until then, take care, everybody. Stay safe. And if you have a cigar, it's turning into the fall, sit back, enjoy the weather, and enjoy the cigar.